My name is Caroline Shaya, before marriage, and now it's Caroline Pettel. I was born in Iraq, Baghdad, in 1965.
Okay. Can you tell me your father's name and where he was born and his occupation?
My father's name is Eliyahu, and I think he was born in Baghdad as well. He was merchant, and that's it.
Okay, now your mother's turn.
My mother, her name is Aviva or Haviva Sheena. She was born in Baghdad, and for a while she was working as a teacher. I'm not sure if it was Arabic teacher or English teacher, but mostly she was stay-at-home mom.
What language did your family speak?
My family speak Arabic, and my mom was teaching us English also. But most of my family, not just my parents, we were living together with my grandparents and my uncle. So most of the family spoke 3 languages. They spoke Arabic, English, and French. That was the languages around the house.
Was your family religious, observant?
Not per se religious, but kept tradition.
Which means what?
Holiday was celebrated, they kept tradition.
Okay.
Went to synagogue when on the special holiday and stuff like that.
Okay. So can you tell me any you left when you were pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me any memories that you have of Baghdad as a little girl?
Memory that I have is like, I remember the house. It was like a mansion. Basically, it was a big house. We had a cook. We have a servant. We have always people coming and going. We always had guests in the house. It was non-stop. We had a huge backyard. And I remember going to a restaurant by the river, and I remember a scene of flooding over there once. I don't remember when. My memory as a childhood in a kindergarten, I always felt outsider. I don't think I had friends over there.
Why?
Because they always treat me like I'm a Jewish, I'm outsider, I'm not belonging to their crowd, something like that.
So can you tell me about the Jewish community in the time that you were born? Because when you were born, most of the Jews in Iraq had already left. So what was it like?
The Jewish community was pretty connected. They had their own places of hanging out. And most of the Jews was pretty rich in the area we were living in Baghdad. They were pretty wealthy. And I think that's why most of them didn't leave until then, because they probably thought it won't happen to us and everything is okay. And there is nothing to worry about until stuff weren't turning like that.
So what was happening that made them realize that they had to leave?
The Ba'ath Party the Ba'ath Party took over with Saddam Hussein is kind of in charge, but not really, but he was kind of the leader over there. And then after 6-day war, when Israel won, the situation for the Jews was really bad. Every Jew is considered a spy. And nobody was allowed to work with the Jews. If you work with the Jews and you were caught, your business license will be confiscated. Jews were not allowed to go to school, no work, and there were some Jews who they let go to university just to quiet the international outcry.
So what was your family doing during that time when the Ba'ath Party came to power?
My dad was still working as a merchant, and he had a business running. still doing what he does, and he still had his life and friend around him, so, and he still could provide to the family, so he didn't think of any change.
So what was the trigger that made him realize he had to leave?
He couldn't work anymore. His partner, that was a Muslim, were not allowed to work with him anymore. If he caught the business, doing business, he could be taken to prison. People were hanged in the park, and people were celebrating. Stuff was happening to the Jews. And a year before we left, my aunt tried to escape, and they were caught and tortured. And they were held, I think, for almost a month before they were released. Is after the Nasser was death, the international outcry helped release them. So the whole situation and the people being uncomfortable, decide that there is no future for us anymore, and it's too dangerous.
Hold on one second. Can you tell me about your aunt? What happened? Where she was escaping to when she was caught?
They were escaping to Israel. I don't know exactly the whole detail. Where was she caught? I know they were caught, and the men were tortured, beaten up, and whatever money they had on them was taken. We didn't know what's going on with them for a while until they came back, and that's all I remember. I don't remember a vivid story of what happened to them. All I know, they were captured and tortured.
And then you saw them again?
Yes, after they were released.
So, what was you mentioned something before about your dad's idealism of why he stayed for so long. I know you said he had work and this and that, but...
My uncle was a socialist, and my dad didn't believe in socialism. And although my uncle left Iraq in the 40s or 50s, my dad has to send money to support him. So he didn't see how he can support others. His brother went over there and he still has to support him to survive. My mother understands. I think she enjoyed the life, but she didn't care. But she wanted to go to England, not to Israel, because she thought that in England they have much chance of living a higher standard of living than in Israel.
Do you think that your parents had like residual fears from the Farhud and all of the things that happened before? Were they fearful?
They did, but they did, I think, of all the hanging and whatever happened and people disappearing and finding the dead body at the doorstep of their house. It's a scary feeling for everybody. And when we escaped, we were always afraid that the police will stop us and will get arrested.
It's incredible. Did they have any Muslim friends who were looking out for them at all?
We had Muslim friend. My dad's partner was Muslim, and he was willing to work with him. We had also our maid. She was Muslim, and she told my mom, "I'll give you my passport. Take my passport. Let me help you. Can I come with you?" There were people who were willing to help. We cannot say there were only bad people, but there were people who they were in contact with that wanted to help. But we couldn't tell anybody if we leave. I remember the moment we tried to leave, we went through the front door and we saw people coming to the house. So we went to the back door and we saw people coming from the back door, kind of don't know what to do.
Aside from your aunt who was tortured, did your family have other friends or relatives who were killed or tortured or imprisoned during that period of time?
Probably they did, but I don't remember.
Did you ever hear any stories growing up though?
The story that is vivid in my mind is the escape. I don't think I paid so much attention at the time as a child of what's going on. I remember only always surrounded with people, and there was always a party at the house. There was always people there.
So what's the story of escape? Can you tell me about that?
Sure. We again, after the 6-day war, the situation was really bad. So my father made a deal with somebody that we can escape, and it was the holiday where Iraqi holiday, when the revolution holiday, I think. And we told everybody we're going for on a vacation up north. We're just going for a few days for vacation. And we took a train from Baghdad to Mosul. And we had with us, it was my parents, my sister and I, and my uncle and his wife, and another friend with their 3 kids, and my aunt. And we all were together heading to northern border of Iraq. And when the last station of the train, we got down and we wanted a taxi. And luckily also my uncle had a not Jewish name, and he could speak the dialect of a Muslim dialect in Mosul. So whenever we were stopped, he was the one who presenting his passport and the one who's speaking, because he could speak in their dialect, so that he won't be recognized as a Jew or from somewhere else. Because Jews has a little bit different dialect than the Muslim. So, and when we got to Mosul, we took a taxi, and my dad told the taxi driver, drive north, we want north, away from the crowd. And every time the taxi asks over here, he will keep on telling, no, it's too crowded, keep on going north. And somehow we got to the Arbil, I think, and we stayed there. We hid there in the forest until nightfall. At nightfall, the smuggler that my dad paid, I think, more than $1,000 for each head, came with a pickup truck, and we all crumbled in the pickup truck with the suitcase and everybody. And so we were, I don't know how many people, like 14 people on the back of a pickup truck. And we drove to the Kurdish, to Barzani at the time, was the leader of the Kurdish people. And Barzani did not expect us. He didn't know about our arrival. Even though he was very hospitable and very accommodating, I mean. And he even gave us his soldier's bed to sleep in. And he welcomed us, and the next day he got us a big truck to drive us north in the border, and he asked us at the time to send his regard to Golda Meir. The drive from I don't remember the name, through the mountain to border of Iran, we had to drive on this truck for 5 hours in a windy road at night with no lights, so we won't be detected. Then when we got to our hotel, we stayed there for the night. And then in the morning we got a bus who took us to Iran. And the bus ride took us 16 hours, and we got there at nightfall. And we couldn't find the hotel we were supposed to stay in, and apparently the Sukhnut did not know we're coming that day, or was some miscommunication. And since we didn't have paperwork, we cannot go to hotels without identity or paperwork. At that time, my dad just had enough. He went to a motel, took his shoes off, and told the clerk, I need rooms for everybody. I'll give you paper in the morning. I'm not moving from here until you give me a room. Luckily, it worked for us, and we got rooms for everybody. And in the morning, the Sokhnut, the Mossad or Shaliach, whoever was it, found us and transferred us to the right hotel. And there we stayed for 18 days, 2 weeks before we took a flight with El Al to Israel.
Wow. What are your memories from that whole trip?
For a child, I remember it's more an adventure. I remember from the train track that my white shirt became brown. I remember being in the forest and my dad's going more up in the forest to talk to one of the smuggler, and we're waiting to see what will come out from the discussion, hiding in the forest. I remember the car ride in the pickup. I remember that I don't know what was stepping on my foot and I couldn't say anything because everything was so crowded. I think my dad was sitting and my mom was sitting on him, and then me and my sister on top of her. And I remember when we get to Barzani, I remember the tent and the campfire over there. I remember him giving us a chocolate box for each kid. I remember the bus drive. I don't so much remember the ride. Maybe I was sleeping because it was at night. When we got to Iran, I remember at the hotel we used to play with the elevator up and down until we get yelled at every time. But basically that's it.
Do you have any memories of your parents' experience of all of it?
I remember my parents' experience. I think my dad was scared because he was in charge of all the group, and he was the one who's making the deal with a smuggler. For them, I think it was more scary because every time we stopped, for us as a kid, we didn't know much. But for them to see a police and be scared every second, if we're gonna be arrested or not, are they gonna stop us? Are we gonna go to jail? It's like there is so many stops along the way before we got to the Kurdish people with Barzani, so even then it wasn't still safe. But along this ride with the train, with the taxi person could have turned us over if he wanted to.
So people knew you were Jewish. You think everyone who you met along the way knew?
I'm not sure that everybody knew, but from my father's story, I remember that the taxi driver telling him, "Don't worry, I'll take you to a quiet place up there," or something like that. I'm not sure if they knew we were Jewish or not. I don't have recollection of that.
When you think about this story as an adult, and you know what a big deal it was, that it was like life or death almost, how do you feel? What are your reflections looking back now on your history?
I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we moved to a place that you don't have to worry what you're doing and who you're doing business with. And I know it's so scary. I don't want to be in my parents' shoes with kids. Just thinking what they go through just for the kids, not to suffer or the worry they have to carry with them if something happened and their kids with them.
Yeah. So you went to Israel, your family ultimately. What was it like for your dad and your mom?
It was a culture shock because in Iraq they were the high society over there, living there, and being in Israel, there is no servant or anything. You need to do yourself everything. And for a man, my dad was he was about 50 years old, maybe less. But for a person at 50 to start all over from beginning, it's kind of a tough. It's not easy. And it's not just starting new business. You need to learn new culture, new language, to know how to do. The culture and the stuff in Israel is totally different than the Iraqi, so you had to adjust culturally, mentally, learn the language. Everything is new. So,
Where did you guys live when you arrived in Israel?
when we arrived to Israel, we lived in Ramat Gan.
Did you live in America in an absorption center, Merkaz Klita, or in an?
No, my dad refused.
That's good. So, did your father ever say that he wanted to go back to Iraq? Was he like nostalgic for Iraq ever?
No, my father's dream was to see Saddam Hussein killed. That was his dream.
Yeah. So growing up, were you in Israel? Were you part of an Iraqi community?
My parents' friends, yeah. But as in Israel growing up, me as a person was more trying to disconnect myself from the Iraqi community and be like Israeli, not Iraqi.
Yeah. And you probably did a good job. You were 5 years old when you moved to Israel.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about the things that were left behind in Iraq? Like, same thing I asked Mimi, the houses, the synagogues, all of the Jewish assets that were left.
Everything left there. Nothing was taken. I think maybe 5 or maybe 10 years ago, they was able to take out the Torah scroll from one of the Iraqi synagogue and bring it to New York.
Did your family try and sell any of like their houses or anything? Did they try and get money for everything before
They couldn't sell anything, and they didn't try.
You probably don't remember because you were so young, but I'm curious because you guys left so late. If you saw the other Jewish houses and the Jewish buildings and all of the Jewish property that was just taken away and given to...
I don't remember as a child, but I remember there was time when people left. From the entire family, as we all left, and the only person left was my great aunt, my grandma's sister, because she had asset and she didn't want to leave it and go out. But then around 89, I think she decided that she wants to leave and come. But I think a few days before she decided, before her flight or something like that, she was murdered and robbed of her money.
Uh-huh.
So basically everybody was left, and the whole the Jewish culture in Iraq was the oldest one there is and the biggest one. I think there were more Jews than Arabs.
Yeah, 40% of Baghdad was Jewish.
So everything is there. Basically, we don't know what happened to it.
It's crazy. So, have you carried any of the Iraqi traditions with you now as an adult and a mom and an American?
Basically, when we do the holidays, we do it more the Iraqi tradition. And like Rosh Hashanah, we have much more symbol than the regular Rosh Hashanah. We have it's almost like a seder.
Yeah. You love it?
Yes. I try to keep the tradition.
That's good. So, do you have any last final reflections or things that were left out that you want to preserve?
From Iraq?
Anything of this whole story of being a Mizrahi Jew and Israeli, any anecdotes or memories or anything?
The only thing I want to think is we always talk about the Palestinian refugee. We're never talking about the Jewish refugee and what they went through, because we keep on going and we don't stuck in one place. Life keep on going. We don't feel sorry for ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
Basically. But I think this is the main problem, that the Israeli media and the world is not aware of that. If they will become aware of what the Jews went through, then there will be more balance between the talk about the Palestinian refugee and the Jews. Because what Palestinians sees us is we just taking Jews from Russia, the Russian getting, oh, what did they say in the news the other day, go back to Germany. They don't understand that Jews in Israel is not from Germany and Russia, it's from all over, and especially from those Arab world that they were kicked out.
50% of Israeli Jews, half.
Yeah, and they were kicked from those Arab country that now they want us to...
And kicked and killed and stomped on.
Right, and now they want us to pay for the refugee. How about the Jews refugee? Are they going to pay for that? That's the anecdote.
Yeah.